there is a reason why the demons begged Jesus to allow them to enter the pigs. One day Jesus was preaching in the synagogue of Capernaum, when suddenly he encountered, for the first time, a man possessed by an unclean spirit. Upon hearing Jesus' voice, that person began to scream, letting him know that he recognized him as the Holy One of God. Therefore, the possessed man rejected Jesus' presence, as he knew that Jesus only wanted to destroy him. At that moment, Jesus silenced him and cast him out, causing the unclean spirit to convulse violently while crying out loudly. And within seconds, the demon had no choice but to leave the man's body. All the people who were around were very amazed and asked about this new doctrine in which, with authority, a person commands over unclean spirits, and they obey him. The interesting thing about this event was that Jesus demonstrated two important things that had never been revealed up to that point. Firstly, that there is a spiritual evil power called demon that also operates in the universe but is highly hostile, seeking the destruction of humanity. Its activities are generally related to illness, possession, temptation, and oppression. Also, Jesus demonstrated his total authority over this hostile and destructive power, commanding it to leave the man, and it obeyed. They are not on the same level as Jesus, therefore they cannot even negotiate, they can only beg. From this point on, a clash between both supernatural forces operating on earth is revealed. As spiritual beings, the tools for protection and attack must be spiritual. That is why the power of God is necessary to resist and overcome their influences. When Jesus came to earth in human form, these events began to be recorded in the Gospels, where people enslaved by years of evil beings ended up being freed from all captivity. When the disciples saw Jesus calm the sea, speak to the wind and the storm, they could not believe that another event awaited them that would surprise them even more. After all the disciples and Jesus had finished crossing the sea, they arrived in the region of the Gadarenes, where paganism was widely practiced. There, Jesus encountered another demon-possessed man, ragged and naked, living in the tombs. This man was so aggressive that no one could control or bind him with shackles, as he broke them due to the demons possessing him. But when the man saw Jesus, he fell to his knees and cried out, recognizing Jesus as the Son of the Most High God, just like the man in the synagogue. That's why the demon inside that man cried out loudly, begging Jesus not to torment him. Such knowledge shows that it was not simply a deranged person, since the demon-possessed man was worried because Jesus, as the Son of God, could advance his final judgment. At that moment, Jesus asks him his name, and since the man is not the one who is actually speaking, he responds with the word legion, referring to the fact that it is not just one demon, but many that dwell inside him, since the term legion in Roman times referred to a military unit of around 6,000 soldiers. It was clear then that, even with a legion of demons, he could not stand up to the voice of Jesus, and although there were many of them, they begged Jesus not to send them to the abyss, and to let them enter the more than 1,000 pigs that were in a herd. So Jesus agreed and sent them towards the pigs. At that moment, the herd rushed into the sea and fell down a cliff, and all the pigs ended up drowning in the sea. Some may think that the demons negotiated their sentence with Jesus, but the truth is that Jesus was not going to let them go unpunished for the harm they had caused to the enslaved man. Because just as God did not forgive the angels who sinned, but threw them into hell to be reserved for the day of judgment, Jesus was not going to leave them there either, since Jesus knew that the demons' intention was to continue living in this earthly plane, as being here they could possess another man, so their punishment was imminent before God. Many believe that Jesus had the ability to know what would happen to those pigs, so he let the demons enter them so that the sentence on those demons would still be fulfilled after the death of the animals. However, why are there still legions of demons? Once the demons came out of the man, the change was radical. Now he was sitting with Jesus, dressed and in his right mind. No one had ever dreamed of such a transformation for this man. He was no longer the madman who roamed naked, screaming day and night among the tombs and hurting himself with stones. However, it didn't all end there, as despite many Gadarenes witnessing everything that had happened, they were filled with fear and begged Jesus to leave their area. This was incomprehensible, as seeing the formerly possessed man in his new condition should have filled them with joy and admiration for Christ. Instead, they were afraid of his supernatural power. It is worth mentioning that the inhabitants were also upset about the loss of a large pig herd, and therefore did not appreciate all the good that Jesus could have done in the region. There were still many more demon-possessed or sick people in that region. However, it seemed that they valued their material possessions more than the well-being of others. Nevertheless, countless crowds still preferred to keep Jesus away from them, fearing that their communion with him might result in some material, social, economic, or personal loss. However, by trying to save their possessions, they end up losing their souls. Therefore, Jesus decided to leave that place, and the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons begged him to let him go with him. But Jesus insisted that he stay at home. Thus, the one whom Christ saved became the first missionary sent by the Lord to preach to the city. Therefore, the man obeyed and began to preach in Decapolis about the great things Jesus had done for him. In a sense, we could say that the man from Gadara was able to do what was prevented to Jesus. This story is a warning of what it means for human beings to perish under the power of sin and Satan. The only way for these beings to enter you is if you open the door to them through sin and dark practices. But there is still freedom for those who seek Jesus the Messiah.